the whole theory of political control by imposition of the rule of law from above, which is, alas, the Christian theory of the universe. This is the way God is operating. God is personally aware with his full, total consciousness of every atom of existence. Think of having to be occupied with the vagaries of every human mind. Poor God, the victim of his own power game. And Lao Tzu is saying that in the art of ruling, you do not use force. You never press the issue. He likens the functioning of the Tao to water. And he says, now water is always taking the line of least resistance. It doesn't strive. It always seeks the low level, which men abhor because they always want to be on top. But what can you do with water? You can't cut it. You can't injure it. You can't compress it. So he's saying, in other words, if you want to govern the nation, you must behave like water. He has a conception of the Tao which is, as it were, the exact opposite of all conceptions of God. He says this: the great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. And when merits are accomplished, it lays no claim to them. It says, the swishing wind does not last out the morning. The pelting rain does not go on all day. If heaven and earth cannot keep these things up, how much less can man? So he has an idea of the emperor as an anonymous sort of person who would be, in other words, to a political community in the same way as today the sanitary engineer is. Never would you imagine the sanitary engineer going through town in a great car with a police escort and flags in all directions. Nobody even knows who the sanitary engineer is, and yet he's a very important official. Without him, there would be health problems and all sorts of difficulties. But because he's in charge of the sewers, everybody would say, well, that's not very glamorous. And Lao Tzu is saying that the chief official of the state should have the same attitude as the man in charge of the sewers. That the less he parades himself, the more effective he can be. The less that's known about him, the better. So he says the energies of the emperor should be directed to keeping the minds of the people unpreoccupied and their bellies well filled. In other words, let's not have news about politics. Let the newspapers be full of interesting things, not political things. But our newspapers, which are all about politics, are full of catastrophes. You open the newspaper and what do you read? What is news? Bad news is news. But the saying, you know, no news is good news. All news is bad news. They don't say the great things that are going on. Very rarely. So Lao Tzu advocates no news at all. No discussion of politics. He says, my ideal state would be a small one in which you could hear the chickens in the neighboring state. And there would be no apparent government. It's a kind of anarchy. But of course, anarchy depends upon everybody being responsible. Therefore, if you are going to have a control of an enormous amount of information, it has to be delegated, and you have to trust them all to work together. A highly organized system where a lot of detail is going on has to be a system of mutual trust. There is no way of bossing it. If you want to have it at all, you have to have it by letting go and saying to all the units in it, come on, let's play together. But the moment you come on uptight about them and say, now, I want an accounting from each one of you, each one of them feels a little mean about it, and will conceal information, and you, if you're going to keep charge of the whole thing in that style of behavior, are going to have your hands full. Too full. You won't be able to watch it all. So therefore, every organic complexity works by the delegation of authority. Every organic unity is a system of love, that is to say, of mutual trust. It says, thank God I've got you around. I often think about this. Somebody does something that's marvelous, and I think, what a relief that you could do that and I didn't have to. All that effort that you put into doing this is so beautiful, and it just relieved me of the necessity. See? And that's the way that the life principle really works. In complete opposition to any idea of lordship, of all the credit belongs to me. You as an ego, supposing you've achieved something great, and you say, no, it wasn't my ego that did it. It was all these myriad little molecules and cells, each one of whom contributed to this extraordinary thing that I did. See, you can go in that way towards infinite diversity and say of everything that you did, no, it wasn't me, it was my people. It was all these little fellows who, each one of them did it. To the degree that you go towards the infinitude of the little ones, to that extent you have a true sense of unity. Whereas if you don't give any credit to the little ones and you say, well, I just push them around and so on and so forth, you don't realize how things are put together. This is the true inner meaning of the principle of non-duality. That the truest unity is the same thing as the most detailed multiplicity. You don't know what you mean by unity unless you understand multiplicity. The one throws out the other idea. They balance each other like the back and the front. So in exactly the same way, the more you go for highly articulate multiplicity, the more you get unity. The whole idea of the giving in to the other, trusting it to do it. So this is the real secret underlying the democratic principle, the notion of what a republic is, as distinct from a monolithic monarchy, where the people cease to trust themselves and say to an authority, please, you take care of us instead. It works exactly the opposite direction. And that direction is the opposite direction of the way in which all living organisms flow and manifest themselves.
You see, we spend most of our lives trying to get money, but very few ever stop to ask why they want it in the first place. We chase money as though it's oxygen, as though without it, we cannot live, breathe, or be happy. But have you noticed that the more desperate you are for it, the more it seems to run away? And when you finally stop running, when you stop chasing, it often seems to find its way to you effortlessly, like a bird that lands quietly on your shoulder when you're still. It's quite a curious thing. You want money because you want freedom, but in the chase for money, you often lose the very freedom you were seeking. You become anxious, impatient, and trapped by your own desire. You become like a man digging for water in the desert who forgets that the oasis was already inside him. Now, I want to tell you a secret that life has been whispering to you all along. The money comes faster when you stop needing it to come. when you stop begging the universe with the vibration of lack and begin to live as though you already possess abundance, everything begins to flow differently. Because reality, my dear friend, is not responding to your words. It is responding to your state of being. When you say, I want more money, what you are really declaring is, I don't have enough. And that feeling, that inner frequency, is what the world mirrors back to you. The universe is not your servant. It is your reflection. And whatever you feel most strongly becomes the signal it sends right back. I remember once saying that desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. You see, that is the trap when you tie your joy, your sense of self, your peace of mind to the arrival of money. You postpone happiness indefinitely. You wait for the outside world to change before you permit yourself to feel whole inside. But reality does not work that way. Reality rearranges itself around the vibration you are embodying. Now, the moment you say, I will be happy when I have money, you are broadcasting to existence that you are not yet happy, and existence simply reflects that. It will keep giving you situations that confirm your belief. This is why people stay poor, not because of a lack of effort, but because of the emotional atmosphere they live in, the inner weather they keep repeating each day. But imagine for a moment if you reversed it. What if you decided to feel abundant before the money comes? What if you walked through life with the vibration of someone who already has more than enough? What if you practiced gratitude not as a trick to get something, but as a state of genuine recognition that life itself is already full? Here's the paradox. The moment you stop using gratitude to manipulate the future, it actually begins to change. When you are no longer thanking the universe because you want it to do something for you, and instead thank it because you realize it already has, you step into the creative flow that allows more to come easily. Most people think they must do something to attract abundance. But the real secret is not in the doing, it's in the being. When your inner world is aligned with wealth, when you think, feel, and act like a person who already has it, is inevitable that your outer world will rearrange to reflect that. Because what you truly are inside cannot help but radiate outward. Think of it this way. You do not get money by running after it, just as you do not catch your own shadow by chasing it. You align with the light, and the shadow follows naturally. Money is the same. It is the shadow of your inner vibration. It follows the light of your consciousness. And the brighter that light, the faster the shadow moves to you. You see, money is not a reward from life. It is an expression of energy, a symbol of exchange, an extension of flow. When you are in a state of openness, creativity, and service, when you are genuinely giving your energy to life in a joyful way, money flows naturally as part of that current. But when you contract, when you tighten up with fear or lack, you dam the river. You block the current that was trying to bring you more. And this is the great irony of abundance. The tighter you hold on to it, the less you have. The more you let go, the more you receive. When you understand this, you begin to see why some people seem to magnetize wealth effortlessly. It's not that they are more intelligent, or luckier, or blessed by fate. It's that they have stopped resisting life. They have stopped sending out signals of fear and scarcity. They are not trying to get, they are allowing themselves to be. Now, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that if you wish for money to come faster, you must stop worshipping it. You must stop seeing it as your savior. You must begin to see it for what it truly is, an echo of your inner abundance, a reflection of your relationship with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I feel when I think about money? If you feel tense, anxious, impatient, or guilty, those are the vibrations you are feeding into the field. That is the emotional music you are playing to the universe. And the universe always dances to your tune. If your song is one of desperation, it will send you experiences that match desperation. If your song is one of ease, gratitude, and joy, then it will send you experiences that match that too. So instead of asking, how can I get more money? Ask, how can I feel more abundant right now? Because that feeling is the real currency. Money follows the feeling, not the other way around. You don't wait for a heater to get warm before turning it on. You generate the warmth first. The same applies here. You don't wait for external wealth to create internal abundance. You create the inner abundance, and the external wealth appears as a consequence. Now, the modern mind finds this deeply uncomfortable because we've been conditioned to believe that hard work and struggle are the only valid ways to succeed. We are taught to grind, to compete, to strive. But the truth is, effort without alignment is wasted energy. You can row a boat tirelessly, but if it's facing the wrong direction, you'll never reach your destination. When you are aligned internally, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are coherent, things begin to move swiftly, almost magically. Doors open without effort. Opportunities appear where none existed. People show up at the right moment. You call it coincidence, but it's simply coherence at work. The universe is a field of infinite intelligence, responding to frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you hold emits a vibration. When your vibration says, "I am abundant," the field mirrors it with situations that confirm that truth. But when your vibration says, "I'm lacking," it reflects lack. You cannot deceive the universe. It doesn't listen to your words. It reads your energy. And so, money is not something you earn as much as something you allow. It comes through you, not to you. It flows through the channels of your belief, your gratitude, your openness, and your creativity. It comes faster when you stop pushing it away with resistance and begin to trust that it is part of the same flow that gives breath, sunlight, and life itself. When you truly grasp this, you'll understand why so many spiritual teachers speak about surrender not as a form of passivity, but as a deep act of trust. To surrender is not to sit and do nothing. It is to stop forcing things to happen. It is to stop resisting the natural rhythm of life. It is to know that you are already connected to everything you need, and that your only task is to align with it internally. You cannot attract abundance from a state of frustration. You cannot call in wealth from a vibration of need, because in that vibration, you are telling the universe that you are separate from abundance, and so you remain so. But when you relax, when you breathe deeply and truly feel that life itself supports you, money begins to flow toward you, not as a bribe, not as a prize, but as a natural expression of your trust. So, the doing that brings money faster is not doing in the conventional sense. It is not about hustling harder, or making more lists, or pushing yourself into exhaustion. It is the inner work, the aligning of your state with the energy of abundance. It's the silent practice of tuning your mind and emotions until they sing in harmony with prosperity. You don't need to manipulate the world. You need to harmonize with it. When you do, the world responds with synchronicity, grace, and ease. Now, let's talk about something even deeper, the energy behind the intention. Why do you want money? Truly? Most people say, because I want to feel free, or I want to feel safe. But freedom and safety are not things that come after money. They are the states that allow money to arrive. When you feel free now, the vibration of freedom attracts experiences that match it, including financial opportunities. When you feel safe now, the vibration of safety magnetizes circumstances that confirm your safety, including money. So you must become the thing you wish to attract long before it appears. This is the mystical law of resonance, the same law that governs sound, music, and even the orbits of planets. If you listen to an orchestra, you'll notice that every instrument plays in harmony when tuned to the same frequency. Life operates the same way. When you tune your consciousness to the frequency of wealth through gratitude, trust, and joy, everything around you begins to harmonize. People, events, and ideas tune themselves to your vibration, and suddenly, what once seemed impossible becomes effortless. But if your inner world is dissonant, if one part of you believes in abundance while another part clings to fear, you create interference. You send mixed signals to the field, and the universe does not know which one to reflect. That's why self-awareness is the foundation of manifestation. You must become aware of the stories you tell yourself about money, the fears you inherited, the limitations you absorbed, the beliefs that no longer serve you. Because your beliefs are not truths. They are choices you've repeated so often that they've hardened into reality. But the moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve, and in their place, new possibilities emerge. When you begin to observe your relationship with money without judgment, something remarkable happens. You start to see that the anxiety, the grasping, the need to control, none of it is truly about the money itself. It's about what you believe money will fix. Somewhere deep within, you've been taught that money is the bridge between where you are and the life you want. But the truth is much gentler, much more profound. The bridge is your consciousness itself. If your consciousness is rooted in fear, you could win the lottery tomorrow and still feel unsafe. You could have millions in your account and yet feel poor inside. You'd still check your balance, still worry about losing it, still carry that faint vibration of not enough. Because wealth is not the amount of money you have, it's the amount of peace you feel when you have it. So what truly brings the money faster? Paradoxically, it is the release of the need for it. It is the moment when you realize that money was never the goal. It was only the mirror reflecting how deeply you trust life. When you trust completely, you become like the ocean that never worries whether it will receive another wave. You simply exist in the rhythm of give and take, ebb and flow. Consider how nature operates. The tree doesn't demand sunlight. It allows the sun to reach it. The river doesn't force its current. It simply flows according to gravity. The flower doesn't chase the bee. It blooms. And the bee arrives naturally. Yet humans, with all their cleverness, have managed to complicate the very principle of abundance. We've turned life into a contest. And in that contest, we've forgotten how to receive. To receive is not an act of laziness. It is an act of openness. And that openness is born of trust. When you trust that life supports you, you are no longer trying to force things into existence. You become receptive to the infinite possibilities already surrounding you. You stop narrowing your vision to the single path you believe will make you rich, and instead begin to see the countless other ways abundance can reach you. I once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious, yet everyone rushes around in a panic, as though it were necessary to achieve something beyond that. This panic is the same one that makes you chase money. But if you pause, just pause and truly see where you are, you may notice that life is already taking care of you in thousands of invisible ways. The breath entering your lungs, the sunlight warming your skin, the way your body repairs itself without your command. These are all signs that abundance is already happening, here and now. When you feel that deeply, gratitude arises naturally. Not as a mental exercise, but as a spontaneous recognition of how miraculous it all is. And in that recognition, your vibration shifts. The desperate current of I need softens into I am provided for. The clenched fist opens, and suddenly the river of prosperity can flow again. So, if you wish to make money come faster, stop thinking of it as something outside of yourself. Begin to treat every thought, every emotion, every action as a form of energetic currency. Ask yourself, what am I investing my energy in today? Are you spending it on worry, on comparison, on self-doubt? Or are you investing it in creativity and generosity and trust? Because whatever you give your attention to grows. Money follows energy, and energy follows attention. That is the secret that the mystics and the physicists both agree upon. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a participant in creation. Now, let's explore a simple shift that can transform your relationship with money almost overnight. Instead of asking, how can I get more? Ask, how can I give more? Not give more out of guilt, but out of abundance. Not because you feel obligated, but because giving affirms that you have more than enough. When you give freely, whether it's your time, your kindness, your talent, or your resources, you are declaring to the universe, I am abundant. And the universe, always echoing your state, responds in kind. It cannot help but fill the space you have opened. You become a conduit rather than a container, and the flow accelerates through you. But remember, giving must come from authenticity, not performance. If you give with the hidden hope that it will make you rich, the vibration of need still dominates, and the current remains slow. But if you give because you truly feel rich already, that energy becomes magnetic. People, opportunities, and ideas are drawn to that field of genuine abundance. Have you noticed how easy it is to trust people who are at peace with themselves? You can feel it even before they speak. Their presence radiates calm, their words carry weight, and their actions flow effortlessly. That is what money responds to. It flows toward coherence, confidence, and ease. It avoids confusion, desperation, and fear. So, your task is not to convince money to come. It is to become the kind of person money enjoys being around. You do this through presence, through awareness, through the simple act of bringing yourself back again and again to the truth that everything you need is already here in potential form. When you act from that knowing, your energy field becomes clear. You stop vibrating in two directions at once. You stop saying, I believe I can be wealthy, while secretly fearing that you can't. You begin to live from the state of I already am. That's when the miracles begin, not because the universe suddenly starts paying attention to you, but because you finally start paying attention to the universe. Now, let me tell you a small story, one that carries within it the essence of this whole teaching. There was once a man who lived in a small village. He worked tirelessly every day, hoping to save enough to build a better life. He counted his coins carefully, feared spending them, and went to sleep each night worrying that they would vanish. One day, a wise traveler passed through the village and said to him, "Why do you worry so much? The field you work in is full of gold." The man laughed. "Nonsense," he said. "I've worked that field for 20 years. There's only dirt and sweat in it." The traveler smiled. "Look again," he said. "Not with your eyes, but with your heart." The man was puzzled, but that night he sat quietly under the stars, and for the first time in years, he stopped worrying. He felt the cool wind, the hum of crickets, the quiet pulse of life around him. Something inside him softened. And the next morning, when he returned to the field, he noticed things he'd never seen before: the richness of the soil, the patterns of light, the gentle rhythm of the earth. He began to work differently, no longer with tension, but with joy. And within a year, his crops multiplied beyond measure. He realized then that the field had always been full of gold. It was his own vision that had been poor. You see, wealth does not come from outside. It comes through perception. When your eyes change, your world changes. And so, perhaps the greatest practice for attracting money faster is not affirmations, not strategy, not even meditation in the usual sense. It is awareness. Awareness of your own inner dialogue, awareness of the stories you tell about scarcity and struggle. When you see them clearly, you stop feeding them with belief. And in that very moment, your vibration shifts. Some people ask, "But Alan, if I stop worrying, if I stop caring so much about money, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop trying?" To that I say, no, you will finally begin living. For what we call laziness is often just the absence of fear. When you stop working out of fear, you begin creating out of love. You become more efficient, more inspired, and far more magnetic. Because action born of joy is infinitely more powerful than action born of worry. So here's what I suggest. Begin every morning with a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Before you look at your phone, before you check your bank account, close your eyes and say softly to yourself, "I am supported by life. I am connected to abundance. I am already enough." Feel it not as a mantra to fix something, but as a truth that is already here. Let that feeling expand in your chest until it fills your body. Then go about your day as if this were true. Spend money with joy, not fear. Speak about your goals with ease, not anxiety. Notice the small gifts life brings: a kind word, a smile, a new idea, and treat them as signs that abundance is flowing. Because it is. You will find that when you stop chasing, things begin to chase you. The phone rings, opportunities appear, coincidences multiply. This is not superstition, it is physics. The vibration you emit shapes the field around you. And when that vibration says, "I already have," the universe replies, "Indeed you do." Understand, though, that this is not a one-time trick. It is a way of being. You must keep returning to it every time your old conditioning tries to pull you back into fear. Every time you notice yourself tightening, judging, or doubting, simply pause. Take a breath. Remember the truth. Money is not your source. life is. And life is infinite. As this awareness deepens, something even more extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see that what you really desired was never the money itself, it was expansion, expression, and experience. Money was just one of the ways life could deliver that. Once you realize that, the universe becomes infinitely creative in how it supports you. Sometimes the abundance comes as money. Sometimes it comes as opportunity, love, or insight. But it always comes. And in that realization, you are free. Because when you are no longer dependent on one form of abundance, you open yourself to all of them. You stop being a beggar at the door of life and remember that you are, in fact, life itself, endless, expressive, abundant. So the money comes faster by doing this, by being what you seek, by letting go of the constant effort to acquire and instead embody the state of already having, by relaxing into the present moment and trusting that life is intelligent enough to arrange itself on your behalf. You don't attract wealth by chasing wealth. You attract it by living richly rich in thought, in gratitude, in giving, in trust. And when you live that way, the external wealth has no choice but to match it. Remember, life does not reward desperation, it mirrors vibration. So practice joy now. Practice generosity now. Practice the feeling of abundance now. And soon, you will find that the money was never late. It was simply waiting for you to arrive at the right frequency. Because in the end, abundance is not something you pursue, it is what you are. And when you realize that fully, you'll laugh, as I often do, at the cosmic joke of it all, that you were never trying to get money. You were only trying to remember that you already had everything you needed to let it flow.
There comes a peculiar moment in one's life when joy simply vanishes. Not suddenly, like a door slamming shut, but gradually, like a room dimming without anyone touching the lights. You look around and everything is technically the same. The people you used to laugh with are still there. The hobbies you loved still exist. The world has not changed its shape. And yet, you feel as though something essential has slipped quietly out of your hands. You wake up and the day feels flat. You sit among things that used to spark curiosity and nothing happens. You listen to music that once made your chest bloom with feeling and it now passes through you like wind through an empty house. Conversations feel muffled. Activities feel distant. Even happiness feels like a memory someone else once told you. You begin to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why does nothing bring me joy anymore? This is perhaps one of the most frightening questions a human being can face, because it touches the deepest fear of all, the fear that something in you has broken. But what if the opposite is true? What if nothing brings you joy because something in you is finally working? You see, joy is not something you manufacture. It is something that arises naturally when you are aligned with your own life. It comes uninvited, like a bird singing on your windowsill. You don't have to force it, and you certainly don't have to chase it. Joy is the fragrance of a life lived from the center of oneself. So, when joy disappears, it is not because you have failed. It is because something in you is shifting. Something is dissolving. Something is releasing its grip. There is a phase of awakening that no one likes to talk about. A phase where the colors of life fade, the meaning drains out of your ambitions, and the things you once depended on for emotional nourishment no longer satisfy you. You feel empty, unmoved, disconnected, as though the world has stepped away from you. But what has really happened is that you have stepped away from the world you created before you understood yourself. The numbness you feel is not the death of joy. It is the death of stimulation, the death of distraction, the death of an identity that was built to cope, to perform, to impress, to survive. You cannot find joy because you are no longer resonating with the version of yourself that used to seek it. Now, this stage feels terribly confusing. You may think you are depressed, or apathetic, or emotionally dull, but numbness is not a malfunction. Numbness is a signal. It means your inner system is shutting down outdated pathways. It is refusing to sustain the old narrative. It is pulling you inward, away from noise and toward truth. Imagine you are holding a cup filled with muddy water. The more you swirl it, the murkier it becomes. But if you allow it to become still, the sediment sinks. Clarity emerges from quiet, not from motion. In the same way, your joy sinks when life is asking you to be still, not because joy is gone, but because clarity needs space to surface. The absence of emotion is not the beginning of despair. It is the beginning of purification. You see, the universe is remarkably intelligent, far more intelligent than the thinking mind. And when the life you have been living no longer matches the truth of who you are becoming, the universe does a very gentle thing. It withdraws your excitement for that life. It takes away your enthusiasm, your craving, your emotional reward system, not to punish you, but to guide you toward a larger horizon. You cannot stay in old rooms once your soul has outgrown them. But because humans fear stillness, you interpret this withdrawal as a problem. You chase joy harder, only to feel it slip further through your hands. You try to recreate old pleasures, revive old habits, repeat old patterns, but joy does not return, and the more you force, the more exhausted you become. You begin to ask, why can't I feel anything? But stillness is not nothingness. It is information. It is your inner being saying, you must stop now. You must listen. You must see what is really happening. The collapse of joy is the first sign that the old you is dissolving. The identity you built to survive your childhood, or to satisfy society, or to earn validation, or to keep yourself safe, its time has run out. And the dissolution of an identity always feels like the dissolution of feeling, because for a moment, you do not know who you are supposed to be. You are no longer the person you once were, but not yet the person you are becoming. This in-between space is emotionally quiet, and in the quiet, joy hides. Not because joy has left, but because it belongs to the self you are growing into, not the self you are shedding. Now, some people try to escape this phase. They try to feel something, anything, through distraction. They seek stimulation, drama, high highs, low lows, anything to convince themselves they are still alive. They fear the quiet because the quiet feels like emptiness. But emptiness is misunderstood. Emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the clearing of space for life to enter. It is the moment the soil is turned before new seeds are planted. You cannot grow anything on ground that is cluttered with old roots. So life uproots you. It empties you of old joy so that new joy can take root. This process is not comfortable, but it is necessary, because the joy you used to feel was not deep enough. It was joy based on external stimulation, joy based on identity, joy that depended on circumstances going your way, joy that could be taken from you. Life wants something more stable for you, something deeper, something that comes from within rather than from the world. And so it takes away the old joy, so you can discover a joy that rises from presence, not performance. And this transition is always prefaced by numbness. Before the heart can feel more, it must feel less. Before consciousness expands, it withdraws from the surface of things. Before the self awakens, it sleeps. This is why nothing brings you joy, because the part of you that used to chase joy is dissolving, and the part of you that will experience real joy has not yet fully awakened. Imagine a caterpillar. Before it becomes a butterfly, there is a moment when it is neither one nor the other. It dissolves entirely into a kind of living soup, a formless in-between. If it were capable of emotion, it might say, "Nothing feels meaningful anymore. I don't know what I am. I feel like nothing." But the caterpillar is not dying. It is reorganizing. You are reorganizing. The numbness is your cocoon. The emptiness is your metamorphosis. You are not losing joy. You are losing the version of yourself that required the world to provide it. And here is something even more subtle. The universe often removes joy when you have been living on borrowed energy, when you have been pushing yourself, ignoring yourself, betraying yourself in small ways, when you have been moving too fast for too long, when your nervous system is exhausted beyond what you can consciously admit. Sometimes nothing brings you joy because your body is simply tired of enduring, tired of pretending, tired of performing optimism, tired of carrying the weight of expectations and emotional obligations, tired of trying to survive without rest. And so joy shuts down, not as a failure, but as protection. Your system cannot run on empty forever. It forces stillness when you refuse to give it willingly. This is why joylessness feels like being underwater. The world is muted because you are being asked to rest. You are being asked to face the quiet truth of your own exhaustion. Now, the mind resists this fiercely. It says, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be excited. I should be productive. I should be grateful. But the universe is not interested in your shoulds. It is only interested in your truth. And truth often arrives disguised as stillness, because only in stillness can you finally hear what your life has been trying to tell you. When joy collapses, meaning begins to loosen. The things that once held your identity together no longer feel solid. You begin to question who you are, what you want, what you believe, and why you have lived the way you have lived. This questioning is not a crisis, it is clarity. It is the beginning of authenticity. To awaken is to feel the collapse of borrowed meaning, the collapse of external joy, the collapse of the old self. To awaken is to pass through numbness on the way to truth. And here is the great paradox. Joy disappears because you are finally ready to feel real joy, not the joy of excitement, but the joy of being, not the joy of pleasure, but the joy of presence, not the joy of escape, but the joy of awareness. Real joy does not rise quickly. It rises slowly, like a tide. It rises from quiet, and before it rises, the shoreline must be cleared. This clearing is happening now. You are not broken. You are being prepared. You are not emotionally dead. You are emotionally resetting. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding yourself. The reason nothing brings you joy is because the old you can no longer be satisfied with the world that once comforted it. Your sensitivity is changing. Your awareness is deepening. Your soul is taking the steering wheel from your persona. And personas do not surrender joyfully. So the universe removes joy. It removes stimulation. It removes old meaning. It removes everything you used to lean on. And in that removal, you begin to stand on the ground of yourself for the first time. There is a point, usually after the numbness has lingered longer than you thought you could endure, when something almost imperceptible begins to shift. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic emotion. It comes in the smallest way, so subtle that you nearly miss it. A moment where your breath feels slightly deeper. A moment where the world looks a touch less flat. A moment where a sound or a glimpse of light stirs something faint in your chest. It is not joy itself, but the space joy will return to. You see, before joy can return, the place inside you that receives joy has to be rebuilt. The old structure collapsed with your old identity, and you cannot feel joy through an identity that is dissolving. Joy cannot enter a house that is being rebuilt. The foundation must be cleared, the walls must be undone, the windows must be opened. This is the work that numbness does. Numbness is the renovation of the inner world. And once the renovation reaches a certain point, you begin to feel again. Not fully, not dramatically, but honestly. This is the first sign that you have entered the second phase of awakening. the phase where your emotional life begins to reorganize itself around presence rather than identity. You begin to sense that beneath the quiet, something is alive, something is breathing, something is waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. You may wake up one morning and find that the silence feels less like emptiness and more like spaciousness. You may look at the sky and feel a faint recognition of beauty, not because the sky changed, but because your capacity to perceive it is returning. You may sit with yourself and feel a softness that was unavailable to you before. This is how the new joy approaches, not as excitement, but as gentleness, not as a high, but as a deepening. Joy begins to return as presence. Presence is the ability to inhabit your own life without the filter of expectation or fear. It is the ability to feel without interpreting, without managing, without controlling. Presence is the purest form of awareness. It is the ground of all real joy. Now, at first, this presence can feel unfamiliar. You are used to emotion arriving in waves, in highs and lows, in bursts of enthusiasm or disappointment. But presence brings a different flavor of experience. It is quieter, steadier, more patient. It does not intoxicate. It does not overwhelm. It simply reveals. And so joy shuts down, not as a failure, but as protection. Your system cannot run on empty forever. It forces stillness when you refuse to give it willingly. This is why joylessness feels like being underwater. The world is muted because you are being asked to rest. You are being asked to face the quiet truth of your own exhaustion. Now, the mind resists this fiercely. It says, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be excited. I should be productive. I should be grateful. But the universe is not interested in your shoulds. It is only interested in your truth. And truth often arrives disguised as stillness, because only in stillness can you finally hear what your life has been trying to tell you. When joy collapses, meaning begins to loosen. The things that once held your identity together no longer feel solid. You begin to question who you are, what you want, what you believe, and why you have lived the way you have lived. This questioning is not a crisis, it is clarity. It is the beginning of authenticity. To awaken is to feel the collapse of borrowed meaning, the collapse of external joy, the collapse of the old self. To awaken is to pass through numbness on the way to truth. And here is the great paradox. Joy disappears because you are finally ready to feel real joy. Not the joy of excitement, but the joy of being. Not the joy of pleasure, but the joy of presence. Not the joy of escape, but the joy of awareness. Real joy does not rise quickly. It rises slowly, like a tide. It rises from quiet. And before it rises, the shoreline must be cleared. This clearing is happening now. You are not broken. You are being prepared. You are not emotionally dead. You are emotionally resetting. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding yourself. The reason nothing brings you joy is because the old you can no longer be satisfied with the world that once comforted it. Your sensitivity is changing. Your awareness is deepening. Your soul is taking the steering wheel from your persona. And personas do not surrender joyfully. So the universe removes joy. It removes stimulation. It removes old meaning. It removes everything you used to lean on. And in that removal, you begin to stand on the ground of yourself for the first time. There is a point, usually after the numbness has lingered longer than you thought you could endure, when something almost imperceptible begins to shift. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic emotion. It comes in the smallest way, so subtle that you nearly miss it. A moment where your breath feels slightly deeper. A moment where the world looks a touch less flat. A moment where a sound or a glimpse of light stirs something faint in your chest. It is not joy itself, but the space joy will return to. You see, before joy can return, the place inside you that receives joy has to be rebuilt. The old structure collapsed with your old identity, and you cannot feel joy through an identity that is dissolving. Joy cannot enter a house that is being rebuilt. The foundation must be cleared, the walls must be undone, the windows must be opened. This is the work that numbness does. Numbness is the renovation of the inner world. And once the renovation reaches a certain point, you begin to feel again. Not fully, not dramatically, but honestly. This is the first sign that you have entered the second phase of awakening, the phase where your emotional life begins to reorganize itself around presence rather than identity. You begin to sense that beneath the quiet, something is alive, something is breathing, something is waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. You may wake up one morning and find that the silence feels less like emptiness and more like spaciousness. You may look at the sky and feel a faint recognition of beauty, not because the sky changed, but because your capacity to perceive it is returning. You may sit with yourself and feel a softness that was unavailable to you before. This is how the new joy approaches, not as excitement, but as gentleness, not as a high, but as a deepening. Joy begins to return as presence. Presence is the ability to inhabit your own life without the filter of expectation or fear. It is the ability to feel without interpreting, without managing, without controlling. Presence is the purest form of awareness. It is the ground of all real joy. Now, at first, this presence can feel unfamiliar. You are used to emotion arriving in waves, in highs and lows, in bursts of enthusiasm or disappointment. But presence brings a different flavor of experience. It is quieter, steadier, more patient. It does not intoxicate. It does not overwhelm. It simply reveals. You begin to see that joy was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to return. The return of joy is the return of truth, the return of alignment, the return of the part of you that was buried beneath effort and identity. It does not matter how long you have been numb. It does not matter how deeply you believe something was wrong with you. Life has been reorganizing you in the dark, preparing you, softening you, bringing you to a place where joy can be recognized again, not as a burst of emotion, but as the quiet radiance of being awake. You see, joylessness is not the opposite of joy. It is the purification of joy. It is the space where old meanings dissolve so new ones can emerge. It is the silence before the deeper life begins. And now you stand at the threshold of that deeper life, a life in which you do not chase feeling, but allow feeling, a life where you do not grasp at joy, but recognize joy in everything, a life where you understand that joy is not something you find, but something you become. Because when the old you falls away, and the noise dissolves, and the numbness clears, you discover something astonishing. Joy was never in the world. It was always in your awareness of the world, and now that awareness is being restored. Not as it was before, but as something new, something deeper, something clearer, something truer. What returns now is not excitement. What returns now is not stimulation. What returns now is the simple miracle of being alive. This is the joy that cannot be taken from you. This is the joy that arises when you stop chasing and begin listening. This is the joy that emerges when you finally meet your life without resistance. This is the joy that was waiting for you in the silence. And now, because you have passed through the numbness, because you have been emptied, because you have surrendered the old identity, you can finally feel what was here all along. A joy that does not shout, a joy that does not vanish, a joy that does not depend on anything, a joy that simply is. This is the return. This is the rebirth. This is the beginning of a life lived from the center of yourself. And this is where joy begins. You see, the funny thing about human beings is that we are always looking for something that has never been lost. And we're so clever at it that we can spend an entire lifetime doing it, quite seriously, with great books and big temples and heavy questions like, what am I really supposed to do? We are, in a sense, professional seekers. And like any good profession, it has its tools: meditation, prayer, therapy, business plans, protein shakes. Each one promises to finally get you there. But no one ever really tells you where there is. And perhaps that's the first clue, because what if you're already there and your search is simply disguising the fact that you don't want to be? Now, this is rather awkward, isn't it? Because if that's true, then the whole structure of modern ambition collapses. The idea that you can finally fix yourself, finally earn peace, finally reach some kind of enlightened state, it all begins to look like a dog chasing its own tail, round and round. And if you're fast enough, you might even think you're getting somewhere. But the moment you stop, you see the whole game. You were the one spinning all along. And you see, this is the sort of divine joke the universe likes to play. It gives you the taste for the search, it gives you the books and the teachers and the podcasts, and it lets you run until you collapse in exhaustion. Because only when you are tired enough of looking does the real seeing begin. There's an old Zen story, you know, about a student who went to his master and said, "Master, I am tired of seeking. What shall I do?" And the master said, "Good. Then stop seeking." And the student, frustrated, said, "But if I stop seeking, how will I find it?" And the master smiled. "Ah, you see, the seeker is the problem. That's the heart of it. You see, the universe isn't hiding from you. It has never once gone into hiding. It's been dancing in front of you all this time, in your breath, in the wind that moves through your hair, in the absurdity of trying to explain what you already are. But you were so busy looking out there that you forgot to feel here. And it's not your fault. You were raised in a culture that worships the pursuit. You were told to chase grades, careers, happiness, enlightenment, even authenticity. You were never told that the moment you try to possess these things, they vanish. Happiness isn't something you own, it's something you notice. Peace isn't a goal, it's an atmosphere that reveals itself when the noise stops. And enlightenment, well, that's the greatest punchline of all, because there's no one left to achieve it. You see, every great tradition, whether Eastern or Western, has in its own poetic way been whispering the same thing. Stop running. The thing you're looking for isn't hiding behind the next corner of the mind. It's right here, breathing with you, looking through your eyes, pretending to be the one who's searching. And if you really listen, I mean really listen, you'll feel a strange silence begin to open beneath all your questions. It's not an answer, it's not even a thought. It's more like space, the kind of stillness that has always been there, quietly supporting the noise. Most people are afraid of that silence. They'll do anything to fill it: music, scrolling, arguing, manifesting, improving. Because silence reveals something uncomfortable, that the one who's trying to be fixed was never broken in the first place. So here you are, after years of self-help, still sitting on the same chair, in the same skin, thinking that you should be different. And that thought itself keeps the wheel spinning. Because the moment you think you should be something other than what you are, you've already rejected life as it is. And life, being infinitely polite, will keep offering you new forms of dissatisfaction, just so you can continue your noble quest to fix what was never wrong. It's a rather generous universe in that sense. But it's also mischievous. It lets you build your little altars to progress and discipline, and then, just when you think you've mastered the game, it knocks them over. Not out of cruelty, but to remind you that you can't hold what is already you. The same way you cannot bite your own teeth or see your own eyes directly, you cannot find the self because you are it. The one looking is the one being looked for. The whole search collapses when you see that the seeker and the sought were never separate. And so, at the end of all your efforts, after all your striving, something rather beautiful happens. You give up, not in defeat, but in relief. You realize you've been standing in your own way this entire time. And when that realization dawns, not as an idea, but as a felt sense, the whole machinery of striving falls silent. And in that silence, there it is, the thing you've been running after through lifetimes of desire, discipline, guilt, and effort. Peace, not earned, not achieved, simply revealed. You see, the secret was never hidden, it was only ignored. But don't take my word for it. Try doing nothing, truly nothing, for just a moment. Don't try to meditate, don't try to breathe properly, don't even try to be present. And suddenly, there you are, the one who was never lost. Once you have seen that the seeker was never separate from what was sought, there comes this strange question, what now? Because life, you see, doesn't stop just because you've had a moment of realization. You still get hungry, you still have to pay bills, you still forget where you left your keys. And this is where most people trip again. They think awakening means rising above life. No, no, no. No, it means sinking back into it. It's like realizing the ocean you were swimming in was water all along, and suddenly you relax and float. Now, that doesn't mean you never sink again. Sometimes you still struggle, still grasp, still worry, but you know something you didn't before. You know it's all part of the same ocean. And so life becomes, in a curious way, lighter. Not easier, necessarily, but lighter. You stop dragging yourself around like a problem to be solved. You begin to laugh at the whole cosmic hide-and-seek game that consciousness seems to be playing with itself. You see, existence hides from itself in the form of you. It forgets it's infinite, and then spends years trying to remember. And when it finally does, it says, "Ah, that was quite the game." And then, just as easily, it forgets again. That's why the wisest people in history always had a sense of humor. They laughed, not because they didn't care, but because they finally saw the absurdity of caring too much. They realized that seriousness is a form of fear, the refusal to let life flow as it is. When you stop taking yourself so seriously, something beautiful happens. Compassion begins to arise naturally, because you no longer divide the world into you and them. You look at another person, even the difficult ones, and you recognize the same cosmic mischief behind their eyes, the same confusion, the same longing, the same search for something that was never gone. And you can't help but forgive them. Because how can you stay angry at a dream character once you know you're dreaming? Now, this doesn't mean you suddenly become passive or lose your individuality. It means you start to live as life itself, not as an actor trying to control the plot. You begin to see that every movement, every breath, every impulse, even the ones you used to call mistakes, are all part of one continuous motion of being. It's like watching fire. No flame is separate, yet each dances in its own way. And if you watch carefully enough, you begin to see that all of existence is dancing with itself, as itself. The tree is dancing as a tree. The bird is dancing as flight. And you, my friend, are dancing as you. That's the real freedom, not to escape the dance, but to join it fully. Because you see, every attempt to control life was a misunderstanding of what control actually is. Real control is not domination, it's participation. When a musician plays perfectly, he's not controlling the instrument, he's merged with it. In the same way, when you stop trying to fix your life, life begins to play through you like music. You still make choices, yes, but they no longer come from fear. They arise naturally, like waves forming on the sea. And the sea doesn't need to plan its waves. So, how do you live once you've seen that you were never lost? You live like a person who's finally come home. You stop performing for a God you thought was watching you, and instead realize you are that very watching. You begin to enjoy simple things again, not because they bring you closer to enlightenment, but because they are enlightenment in disguise. The sunlight on the floor, the laughter of a child, the way a stranger smiles for no reason at all of it is sacred because all of it is you. Now, some people worry, if I stop striving, won't I become lazy? Won't life fall apart? No, because you never really controlled it in the first place. The planet spins quite beautifully without your supervision. Your heart beats all on its own, and your lungs keep rhythm with the wind. You were never the conductor of this orchestra. You were always part of the symphony. And when you realize that, you stop trying to outsmart the music. You simply listen. There's a subtle intelligence, you see, that moves everything, and when you stop resisting it, it moves through you effortlessly. You begin to trust again, not in belief, not in dogma, but in direct experience. You feel the universe breathing you, feeding you, thinking you, and then one day you laugh because you finally understand the punchline. There was never a you to be saved. There was only life, pretending to be a person who needed saving. And the great irony is that the moment you stop trying to be spiritual, you become naturally spiritual. The moment you stop trying to be perfect, you begin to live perfectly. Not because you followed some map to heaven, but because you realized you were standing in heaven all along. So when the mind starts whispering again, maybe I've lost it, maybe I need to get back, just smile. You can't lose what you are. The sky doesn't need to remember it's blue. All that really changes is the seeing, the recognition that life was never a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced. You are not here to reach something, you are here to express something. And that expression is happening right now, as this breath, as this moment, as this incredible play of form and silence. And when the curtain finally falls, as it does for everyone, you won't be afraid, because you'll know it was only a performance, and you were both the actor and the audience, clapping for yourself all along. So when you've tried everything, every book, every technique, every dream of becoming something greater, nothing seems to work, maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's grace, because the end of seeking is the beginning of seeing. And when you finally stop trying to find the secret, it smiles at you quietly and says, the secret was never hidden.
We live in a society that worships control. From the moment we are born, we are taught that life is a series of problems to solve, challenges to overcome, and goals to achieve. We believe that the more we organize, plan, and hold tightly to the reins of our existence, the safer and happier we will become. And yet, as we grow older, a strange contradiction emerges. The more we try to control life, the more life seems to resist us. The harder we grip, the faster it slips away. It is almost comical when you think about it. Consider the way we structure our days, meticulously planning every hour, anticipating every potential outcome, and attempting to predict the unpredictable. We wake up each morning with a mental checklist, a blueprint for how the day should unfold. And yet, in a single moment, the unexpected appears: a traffic jam, a delayed message, a sudden illness, and our carefully laid plans unravel. Frustration arises, and we label this as bad luck, when in reality, it is merely life refusing to be tamed. Control, as it turns out, is not a mastery of reality. It is an illusion, a mental construct that gives the appearance of stability while masking the inherent unpredictability of existence. We cling to it because it feels safe. We cling because to acknowledge the lack of control is to confront uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying. Yet the paradox is that this very attempt to hold tightly creates tension, anxiety, and fear. The more we try to secure life, the more fragile it becomes. Think of a child learning to walk. The child takes their first tentative steps, falling repeatedly, scraping knees, and wobbling with each attempt. The parent watches, worried, perhaps even wanting to intervene and prevent the stumbles. Yet, the child learns not through control or interference, but through experience, through trial and error, through the very act of letting the body and the world interact freely. This is life's natural way. The parent cannot stop every fall, just as we cannot stop the events of the universe from unfolding. The river does not pause to ask your permission before it flows. The wind does not stop for you to adjust your plans. The sun rises and sets without concern for your schedules or desires. And yet, there is a strange harmony in all of this, a rhythm that persists regardless of our attempts to manipulate it. When we resist this flow, we experience suffering. When we surrender, we experience life. Consider the metaphor of the river. We often stand on the banks, attempting to push the water in a direction we desire, thinking that by shaping it, we can achieve our goals. And yet, the river will always carve its own path, indifferent to our efforts. To fight the current is exhausting, painful, and ultimately fruitless. But to enter the river, to move with it rather than against it, is to discover a freedom that cannot be grasped through force. This is the essence of the illusion of control. It is the belief that we can bend life to our will, when in reality life is a river and we are merely travelers. It is not only external events we attempt to control, but also our inner world. We strive to manage our thoughts, suppress our emotions, and shape our identities into something stable and permanent. Yet the mind is a flowing river as well, constantly moving, changing, and evolving, attempting to hold a single thought, to cage a feeling, or to solidify a sense of self is like trying to trap water in your hands. It slips away, leaving only frustration and a sense of inadequacy. We must recognize that control is often a response to fear. We fear the unknown, the unpredictable, the unplanned. We fear that if we let go, we will lose ourselves, we will be swept away, we will fall into chaos. But the truth is that life is chaotic anyway. To cling is to resist the inevitable. To release is to embrace reality. There is a liberation in understanding that the need for control is optional, that it is a habit of the mind, not a requirement of existence. Let us consider the human desire for security. We work tirelessly to secure jobs, relationships, wealth, and possessions, believing that these external anchors will protect us from uncertainty. And yet, no matter how much we accumulate, the impermanence of life remains. Jobs end, relationships change, wealth can vanish, and bodies age. Security, when it is external, is always provisional. True stability is found not in controlling life, but in understanding its nature and participating fully in its flow. History is filled with examples of people who sought total control only to discover its futility. Emperors, kings, and rulers have tried to bend entire nations to their will, yet time, disease, and unforeseen events have always undermined their efforts. The lesson is clear. No matter how much power we accumulate, the universe remains unconcerned with our ambitions. The only freedom is to acknowledge this truth and live in accordance with it. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. Participation in life is necessary, yet it is participation without attachment to outcomes. It is action guided by insight, not fear. It is engagement that is responsive rather than coercive, fluid rather than rigid. It is the difference between dancing with life and trying to wrestle it into submission. When we release the illusion of control, something profound happens. We become present. We notice the subtle textures of experience, the rustling of leaves, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter. Life becomes vivid, alive, and immediate. We discover that the need to control often distracts us from the very experiences we seek to secure. By letting go, we are no longer trapped in anxiety about the future or regret over the past. We are free to encounter the world as it is, in all its beauty and unpredictability. And so, the first step toward freedom is awareness. Recognize the illusions you hold, the attempts at control that bind you, the fears that drive your grip. Observe them without judgment. Understand that these impulses are natural yet not necessary. Begin to loosen your hold, even in small ways. Let a conversation unfold without planning every word. Let a day pass without trying to predict every outcome. Let yourself feel fully without attempting to shape or suppress what arises. The journey is gradual. Letting go is not a single act but a continuous practice, a dance between effort and surrender. Each moment offers a chance to release a little more, to trust a little more, to participate more fully in the flow of life. The illusion of control begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet, steady presence. And in that presence, a freedom emerges, a freedom that cannot be given, taken, or lost, because it was never bound in the first place. To understand why letting go feels right, we must first understand what it means to let go. Letting go is often misunderstood as giving up, as surrendering in defeat, as stepping away from life. But in truth, letting go is the acknowledgement of reality. It is the recognition that life is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to be experienced. It is the act of opening our hands, not to relinquish life, but to allow life to flow through us, unimpeded and unshaped by fear. Imagine standing in a forest. The trees rise high, each one unique, bending in the wind without resistance. The birds sing without rehearsal. The stream moves without effort. You cannot command these things, and yet they exist in harmony. The forest does not try to control itself. It's simply island. In observing this, something awakens within you. You sense the ease, the rhythm, the natural order of things. And you begin to understand that the act of controlling is not necessary for existence. It is participation, awareness, and presence that matter. Letting go is not about abandoning responsibility. It is about releasing the belief that we can enforce outcomes or cling to permanence. It is the difference between holding life like a fist and holding it like a hand open to the sky. The open hand does not resist. It does not suffocate. It allows, it receives, it participates. When we practice this in our daily lives, we find that life no longer feels like a battle, but like a dance. Each movement, whether expected or unforeseen, is part of the rhythm. Consider our emotions. We often try to control feelings, to suppress anger, sadness, or fear, believing that these states are dangerous or undesirable. And yet, by resisting them, we amplify them. By letting go, by acknowledging and feeling without judgment, we discover that emotions are like waves. They rise, they crest, they fall. They do not define us. They move through us. Letting go in this context means allowing the wave to pass rather than clinging to it or trying to stop it. In relationships, letting go means allowing others to be themselves without attempting to mold them into our expectations. It means loving without possession, listening without trying to fix, and participating without attachment. The freedom that arises from this openness is profound. Relationships transform from battles of control into spaces of genuine connection, understanding, and mutual respect. The world often tempts us to control, to predict, to plan. Yet the universe operates according to principles far greater than our design. Storms will arrive, paths will change, and life will surprise us in ways we cannot anticipate. Letting go does not mean ignoring these events. It means meeting them with a mind unbound by fear, with a heart open to possibility. It is the conscious decision to engage fully while acknowledging the limits of our power. Why does letting go feel right? Because it aligns us with the natural order. When we stop fighting against what is, tension dissipates. The mind relaxes, the heart opens, and we experience a sense of spaciousness. There is a subtle joy in this surrender, a quiet delight that arises from the recognition that we are not in charge, and that this is not only acceptable, but beautiful. Imagine a bird learning to fly. It does not cling to the branch forever. At some point, it must leap, trusting its wings, trusting the air, trusting the process. Life, in this sense, is always asking us to take flight, to let go of the false safety of control, and to trust the journey. When we leap, we discover that the world supports us in ways we could not have imagined. We are carried, held, and guided by the flow of existence. Letting go also reveals the richness of the present moment. When we are no longer preoccupied with controlling the future or clinging to the past, we notice the subtleties of life, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet rhythm of our own breath. Life, in all its simplicity and complexity, is fully present. And in being fully present, we discover a profound contentment that no amount of control can provide. The practice of letting go is continuous. It requires awareness, courage, and patience. Each day, we are presented with opportunities to release small grips, to loosen our hold, to trust more deeply. Over time, these small acts accumulate, transforming our experience of life. The illusion of control fades, replaced by a steady, gentle confidence in the flow of existence. In letting go, we find that life itself is enough. We do not need to manipulate, to engineer, or to dominate. The world is alive, vibrant, and unfolding in its own way. By surrendering the need to control, we participate in a dance far greater than ourselves. We discover freedom, joy, and an effortless presence that cannot be manufactured, only realized. So release. Release with trust, release with curiosity, release with love. Allow life to move through you, shaping and guiding you in ways your mind could never anticipate. In this letting go, you will find that you are not losing anything, you are gaining everything. A life lived fully, freely, and beautifully.
It is a curious thing how certain words, certain ideas, certain encounters arrive in our lives at precisely the moment they are most needed. You may wander for years without noticing them, pass them by in books, or hear them spoken in conversations without giving them a second thought. And then, suddenly, one day, the very same words strike you like a bell. They sink in as though they had been waiting all along for this particular instant, as though they had been whispering on the edge of your awareness, patient until you were ready to hear. It is almost uncanny, as if the universe itself had arranged a meeting between you and a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. People often imagine that wisdom works like information, that you can simply accumulate it as you do facts in a textbook. But real wisdom does not behave this way. You cannot force it into the mind by will alone, because wisdom is not simply knowledge. It is recognition, a shift in perspective, a new way of seeing what has always been there. And recognition cannot be hurried. Just as you cannot command a seed to sprout before its season, you cannot make a truth blossom within you until something within you is prepared. The soil of your life must be turned, softened, made ready by experiences, by struggles, by longings you cannot quite name. Only then does the seed crack open. Only then does the teaching find you. We do not like to admit this because it challenges our sense of control. We prefer to imagine that we are the masters of our growth, that we can schedule our awakenings as we schedule our appointments. But have you ever noticed that the most important lessons of your life never arrived according to your plans? They arrived through detours, accidents, heartbreaks, moments of despair. They came when you thought you were lost, when you thought you had failed, when you had given up hope. And it was in precisely those moments that something opened a window, a crack, a ray of light breaking through. What once sounded trivial suddenly became profound. What once was invisible suddenly became undeniable. In this sense, the message that reaches you is not external at all. It is not that some stranger's voice, some book, some lecture suddenly becomes magical. It is that you, in your vulnerability, have been prepared to hear it. You and the message are two sides of the same event, inseparable, like the crest and the trough of a single wave. If you had encountered the same words yesterday, they might have meant nothing. If you had encountered them tomorrow, they might have passed you by. But here, now, at this exact moment, they land, they strike. And something in you recognizes that they could not have come a moment sooner or later. This recognition is unsettling because it suggests that our lives are not purely random nor purely controlled. They move in a mysterious rhythm that we only notice in hindsight. We recall how one encounter led to another, how one disappointment cleared the way for a new opportunity, how one loss prepared us for a deeper love. And in that remembering, we see that what looked like chaos was in fact a kind of dance, as if life itself were weaving a pattern too vast for us to see all at once. When you look back, do you not find that the teachings that mattered most came when you were struggling most? When everything seemed to fall apart, when the future looked uncertain, when you no longer trusted yourself, that is when you were most ready. In comfort, you did not listen. In ease, you did not notice. But in suffering, your defenses cracked, your certainties dissolved, and you became porous enough for something new to enter. It is not that suffering is desirable for its own sake, but that it humbles us, it opens us, it breaks the shell we have built around ourselves. And in that opening, wisdom slips in like water into dry earth. This is why we can say that the teaching finds you, but only because you were also moving toward it all along. Like two rivers flowing from distant mountains, winding separately through valleys and forests, meeting at last in the same sea. You may not have known you were flowing toward this meeting, but the currents of your life carried you here. Every mistake, every success, every heartbreak and joy, each was shaping the channel, deepening the riverbed, until at last the meeting could take place. And when it does, it feels inevitable, as though it had been written in the very grain of reality. We call this synchronicity, or fate, or providence. But these are only words for a deeper mystery, that life itself is not fragmented, but whole. You and the teaching are not separate, not strangers meeting by accident. You are part of the same process, the same unfolding. The words you now hear are not external instructions imposed upon you. They are the echo of your own innermost self, finally reaching your conscious ear. It is like a mirror showing you your own face, which you had somehow forgotten. And when you see it, you realize you have known it all along. But do not think that this recognition means you have now arrived once and for all. For just as one seed sprouts and grows, so another waits in the soil. Life continues to unfold, and new lessons will find you, each at the moment of ripeness. You cannot rush them, and you cannot avoid them. You can only trust that they will come as surely as the seasons change, as surely as the tide returns. To be alive is to be in conversation with reality, and reality never ceases to speak. The irony is that the harder you search for these teachings, the more they seem to evade you. You read desperately, listen endlessly, seek feverishly, and yet feel nothing. And then, when you least expect it, when you have given up searching, when you are simply quiet, they arrive. Why is this? Because seeking with desperation is a kind of grasping, a kind of tension that prevents you from truly hearing. But when you surrender, when you stop demanding that life provide answers on your timetable, you create the space for answers to arise. It is like trying to catch a reflection in water. Stir it with your hand, and the image is distorted. Let it become still, and the reflection appears by itself. So, if you are hearing these words now and they strike you as true, know that it is not an accident. It is not because I have spoken them with special power, but because you are ready. Something in your life has ripened, something in you has softened, and these words land in that soil. And if you are hearing them and they do not yet resonate, that too is not an accident. They may be seeds that lie dormant for now, waiting for the season of your need. Either way, Life is at work, in its own time, in its own mysterious rhythm. What matters is not to cling to the words, but to trust the process. Words are only fingers pointing to the moon, never the moon itself. They are signposts along the way, but the way itself is walked in your own steps, in your own life. The teaching does not live in books or lectures or voices, but in the living movement of your awareness. And the awareness that hears these words now is the same awareness that will carry you through every moment to come. You may believe that when a teaching arrives at the right moment, it is because someone else has given you something you lacked. You imagine that wisdom is outside, waiting to be handed down, like a gift wrapped and delivered from another place. But if you look more deeply, you will see that what truly happens is recognition. The words may come from another, but the truth they awaken is your own. It is like seeing your reflection in a mirror. The mirror does not give you a face. It only shows you what was already there. This is why the teachings that move us most often feel strangely familiar. You hear them and you say, "Yes, I knew this, though I never put it into words." You feel as though something you had forgotten is suddenly remembered. And that feeling of remembering is the mark of real wisdom, because wisdom is not the adding of something foreign, but the uncovering of what was hidden. The seed was always in you. The words, the teacher, the moment of crisis were only the rain that awakened it. In this way, life itself is the teacher. Every joy, every sorrow, every accident and triumph is part of the curriculum. Sometimes the lesson comes gently, like a friend offering a hand. Sometimes it comes harshly, like a storm tearing away what you clung to. But always it comes when you are ready to receive it, whether or not you realize you are ready. You may resist, you may protest, you may even despair, and yet when you look back later, you see that the timing was perfect, that without that experience you would never have awakened to the truth that now sustains you. To see this is to relax the grip of fear. For most of us spend our lives afraid that we are missing out, that we are behind, that we should have already known, already succeeded, already become. But life is not late, nor is it early. It is always on time. The message arrives when it is needed, not when the ego demands it. And so the teaching you hear now, at this exact moment, is precisely what belongs to you now. Tomorrow, another will come, and so it goes, endlessly unfolding, endlessly ripening. Think of the seasons. The tree does not bear fruit in winter, nor does it cling to its leaves in autumn. Each stage has its own necessity, its own beauty. In the same way, your life unfolds in seasons of growth, of loss, of waiting, of abundance. To demand fruit when the branches are bare is to suffer needlessly. To trust the cycle is to see that nothing is wasted, nothing is out of place. Even the falling of the leaves, even the emptiness of winter is part of the renewal. So too with the teachings that reach you. They come in their season, not before, not after. They come when you are open enough, tender enough, broken enough, or strong enough to hear them. And when they come, they awaken in you not something alien, but the deeper part of yourself that was waiting to be remembered. The truth has always been yours. The timing is life's. And perhaps this is why we often say, the universe is speaking to me. What we mean is that we sense an uncanny fit between our inner need and the outer event. A phrase in a book, a line in a song, a chance conversation, it lands with such precision that it feels orchestrated. But the orchestra is not outside you. It is the unity of inside and outside. The recognition that what appears in the world and what arises in you are not two, but one. The synchronicity is not a message sent from elsewhere, but the expression of wholeness revealing itself. If you can see this, then you realize that nothing is ever truly wasted. Even the messages you ignored years ago, even the teachings that seemed meaningless at the time, are part of the unfolding. They were seeds scattered in the soil. Some sprouted quickly, others lay dormant, waiting for rain. And when the rain comes, even decades later, the seed awakens as though no time had passed. Life does not forget. It waits. This understanding changes how you approach the present. Instead of grasping desperately at every teaching, fearing that you must capture them all, you can relax. What is meant for you will not miss you. What you are not ready for will simply pass by, and that too is fine. You do not need to force the process. You only need to live attentively, to be present, to allow life to work upon you as it always has. The rest will take care of itself. And here lies the final paradox. When you see that the message always finds you when you most need it, you realize that you never needed the message at all. For what it points to is the awareness that has always been here, the awareness listening now, the awareness that is the thread running through every moment of your life. The teaching is not the truth, you are. The words are only reminders, echoes, invitations. What they awaken is the recognition that you are inseparable from life, that you are the dance itself, not a separate dancer trying to learn the steps. Imagine for a moment that life is a vast ocean. Each wave rises, falls, and dissolves back into the sea. A wave does not need to be told how to rise or how to fall. It is carried by the ocean's movement. In the same way, you do not need to be told how to live. You are already living. You are already the expression of life's movement. The teachings that reach you simply remind you of what you already are, the ocean waving here and now. And when you see this, the anxiety begins to dissolve. You no longer worry that you are behind, that you have missed your chance, that the wisdom you needed has passed you by. For how could you miss what you already are? How could you be late to your own being? Whatever comes, comes in its time. Whatever does not come, was never meant for this season. To trust this is to rest in the unfolding, to surrender the constant demand for answers, and to discover that the answers are already present in the silence of awareness itself. So, when you hear these words, take them not as instructions to be followed, but as reminders of what you already know. Let them wash over you as waves wash the shore, not grasping, not clinging, not analyzing. If they resonate, it is because the time has come. If they do not, it is because another time will. Either way, life is speaking and you are listening, because you and life are not two. You are the same movement, the same mystery, the same awareness looking at itself through countless eyes, and perhaps that is the deepest teaching of all, that nothing is missing, nothing is wasted, nothing is out of place. The message finds you when you most need it, because you and the message are the same. The giver and the receiver are one. The timing is perfect because there is no other time. There is only this, now, endlessly appearing, endlessly sufficient,